Sir Richard Branson. Those three words say it all. In today's episode, we get up close, personal, and we talk about reaching for the stars goal setting with the culmination in Richard's life of a 30-year goal that he had set back in 1991, where he started the Virgin Galactic dream. And now here in 2021, he made that dream a reality, becoming an astronaut, hitting space for the first time just recently. So we're going to talk with Sir Richard about how to set those goals and how you can make your childhood dreams come true as well. Before we get to the very practical goal-setting masterclass with Sir Richard Branson, where we're going to sort of dive deep into setting big goals and the step-by-step process of how to achieve them, I want to just talk to you about another little thing and a little principle that Richard shared with us from the stage when we were asking the question, if Virgin, his massive brand, decided to enter the real estate space, what would he do? And have a listen to his answer right now, and then we're going to talk about that for a little minute.
If I was an estate agent, let me just think, what would I do? Anyway.
He's getting serious now.
Yeah, I think as an estate agent, you do need to think, is there anything that could happen to us that could really damage us? How much of a threat is the internet? How much of an advantage is it? If those people that we're putting a lot of business with on the internet ever were to turn around and start taking lots of business direct, what would that do to our business? How would we respond? And I was just thinking about this in the back room before coming. I think if I was you lot, since you do meet occasionally, one way of responding is, you form a company with all the estate agents in Australia, and you say, don't you mess with us. We'll come in and compete with you, and we'll put our business with you, and that'll protect you. So you do need to always think about, what's the worst that can happen? How can we respond? In business, you just got to protect the downside. You've got to know that the next 5 years, your income's going to continue to come in and grow, but if you do see a threat, be ready to deal with that threat, and if necessarily, get together, be a strong body of people to deal with threats.
All right, so with all that said, as you can see, some of the highlights of that answer were key implementation and use of technology, both protecting yourself from the threat of technology being used against us and our use and implementation of technology, and also the power of collectively all of us getting together so that we've got some clout with those technological powers, like the ones that that we see in America, where Zillow and all those other companies, the equivalent of the portals, are marketing direct to consumers and taking massive slices of the commission in order to generate those leads. So in light of that, there's a couple of strategies that we've put in place, being inspired by Sir Richard, that we've already started to take the steps on. And one I want to talk to you about today is, if you go to thefutureofrealestate.com.au, that's thefutureofrealestate.com.au, you and I can have a chat about a group that we have already started to put together. There's 58 of us as it stands at the time of this recording, and it's growing faster than any other group has ever grown before. If you want to have a chat to me about joining that group, either formally or informally, just go to the Future of Real Estate, and we'll have a chat about you joining our little collective. Again, once again, inspired by the advice of Sir Richard Branson. Now, on with the main exercise, which is today's masterclass in goal setting. Let's go to it. All right, let's get to work with our goal-setting class with Sir Richard Branson. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the interview with Sir Richard, where he tells the story about Virgin Galactic. So the first thing we're going to do, and I'd urge you, have pen and paper and write down some of the principles, because after this interview, we're going to take on board what Richard said, and then you and I are going to put in place an execution plan with some of the key points where I break down how me and many of my friends have used those principles that Sir Richard is about to explain explain to us in this class, and then we're going to put together an execution plan after the core part of this interview is done. So let's watch this, take some notes, try and write down and identify some of the principles that Richard tells us, and then you and I are going to discuss them and put together a plan for you to do the same thing for your life. So let's now go to the interview with Sir Richard Branson on reaching for the stars, setting these big, giant, what one of my mentors called grand dream goals. Let's go to that interview right now.
Mate, how does a guy who founded a magazine, trains, record label, and now commercial space travel, mate, is that just the thinking biggest of thinking big? Can we, in the future, tell us about what the thinking was behind, you know what I want to do? I want to do commercial space. I want to have a Virgin Galactic. My goodness, you've got to speak to that.
Well, look, I think, again, everybody in this room, you know, once you've run one business and you've learned the art of how to deal with people, how to motivate people, you know, how to pay the bills, then you can actually run any business. I mean, the key thing is finding those, you know, wonderful people at the top to run those businesses. And you know, I've now been in business since I was 15, so 50 years. And oh my God, 50? Or was it 60? Well, no, 50. No, don't do that. I'm not going to speed life up. You know, the exciting thing is you realize, you know, my God, well, if I can pull off, you know, taking on Qantas, or if I can pull off taking on British Airways, then you know, I can set up an organization that deals with conflicts in the world, you know, like the elders, or I can, maybe find somebody who can build us a spaceship and go into space. So literally with Virgin Galactic in 1991, I just loved the name Virgin Galactic Airways, so I registered it. That was the very first move I made. And then I got on a plane and I went searching for an engineer or technician who could build us a spaceship. And I was lucky enough to find a genius, Bert Rutan. And it is rocket science. It is tough. It's taken us a lot longer. We've had last year a lot of tears on the way, but later this year our second spaceship will be finished and unveiled, and hopefully we'll be back on track. Wow. And we have a little video to show you, just to give you a warm up.
We've got a video there.
The exploration of space will go ahead, and it is one of the great adventures of all time. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory on Mount Everest was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there. Well, space is there, and we're going to climb it.
Virgin Galactic aspires to be the world's first commercial space line. So what does that mean? It means not just that we're operating a single space vehicle, but that we're creating an incredible experience for our customers. And it means that many of the things that we do have never been done before.
See space from above. Every astronaut I've talked to, that changes them. From above, you don't see state and country borders. You see the Earth's resources as fragile environment. The more people that see that themselves, the more they'll make that part of their daily lives. And I hope by the time my kids are ready to go into space, we've changed our global culture to recognize that space is where we belong, and the Earth is something that needs to be a little better protected.
you signing up to it? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, thank you very much. Yeah, so we had
That's our lights. There we go.
we had a horrible accident last year, and in a situation like that, you have to pull yourself together. You have to work out whether it's still worthwhile pushing on ahead. And I went to Mojave Desert, where all the 400 engineers are working, and it was very clear to me that every single one of them wanted to continue. The family wanted to continue. And we had the biggest hug ever, all 400 of us. And the next day, they all got back to work, and we're very much back on track. And so I hope, from the start of next year, we'll be starting taking people up, and I hope one day a number of people in this room will have the chance of becoming astronauts and going to space. So we'll see how we go.
Wow.
Who would like to go to space one day?
I'm in. Who's coming? There you go. There you go,
right.
Sir Richard Branson.
Well, I hope you all earn lots of money.
Yeah.
Sell lots of houses.
There you go. Look, he's closed you from stage, guys. He's done the job.
All right, so there's Richard's story. Now let's go through how that can apply to you, to your story, with examples of the very steps that Richard either took, or because it might have been accidental, or it might have been very, very on purpose. But what we found is that in books like Think and Grow Rich, what Napoleon Hill was commissioned to do, I believe by Andrew Carnegie, was to go to the most wealthy people of his time and find out not what the nuances of what they all did and how, because some of the successful people would have done things differently, but what he was on the lookout for, and I think it was 300 of the most wealthy people in the world that Andrew Carnegie was going to introduce Napoleon Hill to, what he was charged with being on the lookout for was what they had in common. Because if he could find the commonalities between the most successful people of his time, then what that gives him is a system for success. And that's what Think and Grow Rich, and this is one of the original versions that I got from my grandmother of all things, that's what he was on the lookout for in Think and Grow Rich. So that's what we're going to do with Sir Richard Branson, with my experience, having lived some dream come true, lifelong goals, with hanging out with people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who did the same thing. There's some things that we've all got in common because I'm emulating their formulas, or formulae, whatever the plural is. And that's what we're on the lookout for, so that you can then replicate that for your goals. So one of the first things that Richard did is he identified a passion early. So I don't know if it was Wayne Dyer or one of those classic American speakers, might have been Brian Tracy, but it was Eric Thomas who said to me that most people, even serious goal setters, don't set goals of what they really, really want. Rather, they set goals for what they think they can achieve. And there's a big difference in that. So what I really want you to do is imagine, well, actually, you know what? It was Eric Thomas who said to me, and I can't remember who said it, because I know Eric asked me a question. I was sitting in the audience, pen and paper in hand, like I hope you've got now. And Eric said to me this question, because Eric said it one way and Jed Xavier said it another way. It was, what would your goals be if you couldn't fail? And then Jet said to me at another seminar some months later, what would your goals be if you weren't afraid? And either way, that now the questions might have been swapped between those two speakers, but either way, my answer was the same thing. And I remember it was Brian Tracy, another one of these amazing speakers. He said, if I had no limitations, what would my goals be? I want you to answer that question, whichever way you want to word it. What would your goals be if you weren't afraid? What would your goals be if you couldn't fail? Without any limitations, what do you want? Let's not talk about how we can get it yet. What do you really want in terms of your business, in terms of whatever your big, another one of my mentors, Kurek Ashley, said, what are your grand dream goals? Dream like you're fantasizing like a kid without limitations, and really, really think big with whatever it is that you want to achieve. Not what you think you can do, but what you really, really want. And then then start to think to yourself, because this is another one of the things that really helped with me. So with Richard, of course, he thought it as a kid that he wanted to go to space. Then in 1991, he was sort of thinking about it, and the first step for him, because that's the next step in his formula, once you've got what you really, really want, you've written it down, and you know it's big, and you know it would mean something to you in a deep, deep way if you could achieve it. Once you've got that thing, the next thing is, what's the first thing that you can do? Like literally today, when you push stop on this podcast, what can you do to take the first step towards the achievement of that goal? So in Richard's case, back in 1991, it was register the business name Virgin Galactic or Virgin Galactic Airlines or something. 1991, think about that. Back in 1991, I don't even know if Virgin Australia as an airline was even here. Were we still in Ansett back in 1991? We were probably still in the Ansett days back in 1991, where it was Qantas and Ansett, as opposed to Qantas and Virgin nowadays. It's hard to even think back that far, isn't it? For those of you folks who remember Ansett, my age and you know, around about. So back before he had any right to think about commercial space travel, Richard already took that first step, and he registered the business name Virgin Galactic. So what's the first thing you can do? For me, it was this. When I set that goal, when the question was asked of me what my biggest, grandest, dreamest goal was for my business, it was to have my childhood hero, Arnold Schwarzenegger, speak at one of my conferences. I didn't even know if Arnold Schwarzenegger spoke. I didn't even know how much it would be. In fact, I assumed it would be way more money than I could ever afford, because back then I'd heard that Donald Trump, when he spoke at a conference in Australia back in maybe 2010 or 11. Now, at that time, my little pokey seminars had maybe, on a good day, my first seminar, I think I had 8 people in it. You know, some of the agents you now know, by the way, like Zach McCarty, Edgar Nadalo, and Chris Gilmore, they were at some of those seminars when I'd have 8 to 10 to 12 people at those seminars. I think the first one Chris came to, I might have had 20 people at that seminar. Chris was in the second row. I remember it very, very well. So for me to set a goal at that time to say, have Arnold Schwarzenegger come to my event was ridiculous. But I set that goal. Now, for me, the first step for me was to figure out if my assumption was true, because at that time, Donald Trump spoke in Australia, and I'd heard that the bill for him was $2 million. And there was this big event where Donald Trump was there, Anthony Robbins, Robert Kiyosaki, T. Harv Eker, like there was a whole bunch of amazing speakers. And I heard the bill for total for the speakers was $4 million. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I heard Trump was $2 million. And here was my thinking when I answered the question without the fear of, like if I had no limitations, or the way Eric worded it, if you weren't, what would your goals be if you weren't afraid? Or Jet, what would your goals be if you couldn't fail? Well, if I couldn't fail and without limitations, it would be have my childhood hero come to one of my seminars. Now we're back in the real world. I am afraid, and I'm definitely afraid to set that as a genuine goal. But here were the 2 things I did. The first thing was I made myself accountable to someone, meaning I told some people about this goal. And then, so we've got this formula. Now, I'm not saying that should be your first step, but what I'm saying is, once you've set the biggest goal, the big dream, whatever that big dream, that big goal is, in Richard's case, Virgin Galactic, in my case, have my hero come and work with me in my business. Whatever that big goal, that big dream is for you. For Arnold Schwarzenegger, it was when he was a young kid over in Austria, going to be the biggest movie star in America. And he knew bodybuilding was going to be his methodology for getting there. And he had these big grand dream goals. Before he could even speak English, he had these dreams of going to America and achieving the unachievable, the millions, 1,000,000,000 to 1 odds to achieve what Arnold Schwarzenegger said he wanted. The odds of him actually achieving that would have been 1,000,000,000 to 1, because no one in the world has really become Arnold Schwarzenegger to that degree. So, and there's 6 billion people in the world. So really it's 6 billion to 1. But I digress. What's the first thing you've got to do? Now, in Richard's case, register the business name. In my case, it was tell someone about it. And then, I'm not going to go into the whole story, but then the next thing was find out how much it would cost. So I sent out some emails just to try and track down and get a quote. It's the first thing you can do. So for Arnold, the first thing to do would be go to the shed and lift a weight, right? What's the first thing, now that you've set your big goals, what's the first thing you can do today to make some progress towards that great? And now, of course, getting a quote isn't really anything like booking a venue and making the goal happen. I didn't even worry about the particulars of making a plan yet. I just knew what the first step would be, and I took that first step after I set the goal. Okay, so now once we've done that, we want to start thinking to ourselves, righto, what's the realistic time frame on this? Now, in Richard's case, I'm sure he didn't know that from 1991 to 2021, it was going to take him 30 years. For me, in my case, I set those goals about 2013, and we did it in 2015, and then again in 2017. And we were going to do it in 2016, but actually, funnily enough, Donald Trump's presidency got in the way, where here's the turn of events, and you may or may not be news, but I'll give you the quick version. We were booked in to do something in 2016 again in Australia. So we brought Arnold out in 2015. We were absolutely going to in 2016. Then we did again in 2017. But in 2016, Arnold was booked in. We were negotiated. It was done. It was a done deal. And what happened was Donald Trump used to be host of The Apprentice. So when Donald got the gig of President of the United States, there needed to be a replacement for The Apprentice, and Arnold Schwarzenegger got the job, and it got directly in conflict with my event. So literally and actually, I was the first casualty of the Donald Trump presidency because I lost my keynote speaker that year. So anyway, it all worked out good. We did something amazing the next year, and it was fantastic. So for me, it took 2 years to achieve that lifelong, what I thought could never be done goal. For Richard, it took 30. So that is going to be very, very different for you, depending upon your goal. So then after you've set the goal, thought to yourself, do I really want it? Because if you don't really want it, I think in Think and Grow Rich, it might be called, I think it's called A Burning Desire. Now, this is a very old version. I know it's been re-updated in more modern language. But yeah, chapter 2, desire. And in this, it talks about getting a burning, burning desire. So if you only kind of want this thing and it's a very big goal that's going to be tough, you might want to think about what you really want. Because if you don't have a burning desire that almost brainwashes yourself, because think about this, for Richard, it was a childhood dream to go to space. He's always been an adventurous kid who was propagated, or whatever the word is, encouraged by his mum, Eve. So he'd almost brainwashed himself that his life's work was to go to space. It took him 30 years from the minute he kind of got serious about the goal, but it would have been 60 years from the time he was a kid till he ended up achieving it. Lifelong goal. Have you got what it takes to have a burning desire that lasts for as long as it takes to get the goal, to get this thing that you want? Now, for me, think about this. I may have set the goal in sort of 2013 and got serious about it then, and then started working towards it, made it happen in 2015. But if you think about it, when I was a teenager, going around my high school, reciting Arnold's and Sylvester's movies, just quoting them, impersonating him badly, screwing around with my friends, he was our collective hero. So if you think about it, I was brainwashing myself my entire life, wanting to meet, and I had no idea that I was even doing it. And again, I think in Think and Grow Rich, great book. I mean, if you haven't read this, you must. I think it's called in chapter, where is it? In chapter 4, the medium for influencing the subconscious mind. So what he's talking about in this is, as you imagine these things over and over and over again with repetition, you're brainwashing yourself to bring this goal into fruition. Now, that doesn't mean just brainwashing yourself is going to make it happen. There needs to be some massive action, some massive planning, and you want to give yourself a reason to, you're not just going to, like The Secret and some of those things where they say, oh, you just meditate about your success and, the universe is just going to deliver it. No, it's going to be a combination of the mental work done in your brain combined with the practical planning, pragmatic work, whatever the word means, that the real world activities, the action steps that give you a reason to be enthusiastic about looking forward to this goal happening. You've got to give yourself some justification some steps along the way that are getting you closer and closer to this goal, to this target, to this dream, to this promise that you're making to yourself, that that's the life I want to live. And I'm going to take whatever steps it takes, no matter how long it takes, in order to achieve it. And it's worth it to me, you know? So it's a great book, this Think and Grow Rich, that it really does map that out. Because one of the things it talks about in that book, again, I've got to get the right wording, is I think it's specialized knowledge. Let me have a look. Yeah, okay, so chapter 5, specialized knowledge. If you don't yet have the chops to achieve the goal that you want to achieve, then you've got to get the chops, you've got to get the skills, you've got to get the tactics, you've got to get the whatever it takes in order to do it. But before you go and figure out what those specialized knowledge is, if you don't yet have it, you've got to make a plan. All right. So you want to make now a step-by-step plan. Now, if that's a monetary goal that, you know, again, a lot of my listeners, you guys are in real estate. So if your goal is, I want to be the next Matt Steinwaiter, but be $1 million performer. Well, the first thing you've got to do is break that down into mathematically, how does that happen? Right. So you need to do the maths. You've got to figure out, right, $1 million performer. First question is that $1 million in your pocket, or is that $1 million in gross revenue? You know, now my business does more than $1 million a year. I don't keep $1 million. I've got expenses, same as you've got. You've got expenses, you've got splits to your agency, whatever the case may be. So you got to make a plan on specifically what you want, then break that down mathematically, if that's possible, into what that's going to take. That's why I went out and got the quote that my first step was figure out, how do you talk to Arnold Schwarzenegger to ask how much? That was an effort in and of itself. I had to find him and his representation. That was tough. But I ended up finding the right people. After a few red herrings were along the way, I found some people that said they represented him that just flat out didn't. Right? So that's the first thing I had to do. But then I had to get a number. Because if that number was $2 million, I couldn't have afforded it. Right? And what I mean by that is, it would never have been a profit made. Well, it didn't make, whenever we've done something big like that with Richard Branson, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, with any of those big names, it doesn't make a profit. At break even at best is all I could hope for. But what I got out of that is I broke even or thereabouts, and I ended up putting myself, my business, and fulfilling a lifelong dream in the process, but also putting my business on the map, metaphorically, where now instead of having 10 and 20 people at my seminars, like it was when I started, I've now got 1,000+ people at my seminars. Very cool, you know, but no profit. The profit came later. So make a plan, do your maths, figure out what it's going to take, figure out what knowledge and what skills and what assets are going to have to be in your business and what it's going to take to get them, whether that's extra learning, whether that's investment in money, whether that's investment in time, and then start to take the steps towards doing it. Speaking of investment in money and time, in fact, let me I'll map out a graph and I'll throw this up on the screen. There's your X axis and there's your Y axis. So on your vertical axis, as you can see there, on the Y axis is the impact that this particular activity is going to have on your business. And that's the Y axis, right? Now, along the X axis is ease of implementation in either time, like specific effort on your part, or money, because a lot of these things might be a financial resource. And then start to map out within your plan what order of your plan you can execute in order to make your individual goal happens, or you might have a variety of goals that need to happen, and to improve your business. What if your goal was to triple your business? Okay, there might be 50 ways and 50 little implementation things you need to do to improve your business. And so what you want to do is, what those two axes will end up implying is 4 quadrants. There'll be quadrant number 1, which will be in the top right-hand corner, which will be the most impact on your business, but the least amount, like it'll be the most, like along the Y-axis, the bottom axis, it's going to be ease of implementation. That means they're the easiest things to implement that will have the most impact possible on your business. It's based on a thing called the Pareto principle, I believe it's called. I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about the Pareto principle. The 80-20 rule, you might have heard. It means that there'll be a certain percentage of your activities, of your things that you do, resources that you invest time or money into, that will result in 80% of your success or results. So what you want to find is the things that are easiest to do and implement in terms of time, resources, money, etc., but have the most impact, and do them first. They're the quick wins. Then the next quadrant is still in the high impact zone, but it's going to take more effort in either time, money, resources, or whatever. It's just going to take more. You do next. Now, quadrant 4 doesn't do much for your business and is really hard to implement. You never touch them at all. So with all of these to-dos, once you've made your plan and you've got some action steps to take, plot all of those action steps within that grid, and you do category 1 first, which is top right, category 2 first, which is top left, high impact project, but you've got to do some work. Easy to do with some impact, but you say it gets a 3 out of 10 on impact it will have, but it's really, really easy to implement. Yeah, you do that when you can get to it, right? That's category 3. And if it's going to be hard to implement and doesn't do much, so if it's like a pain in the butt and it's expensive and it's going to be 2 out of 10 impact on your business, you'll probably never get to category 4 activities, all right? Because they're part of the 80% of the work and they do next to none of the impact on making your goal a reality. So that's kind of part of the plan. Now, the plan is going to change. Do you think the plan between 1991 and 2021, like literally as he's just done it now in Richard's life, like literally we are hot on the heels. If you're watching this as this podcast dropped, you might be watching it some years in the future, but if you're watching this now, literally this was, it was, for me, it was last night. Right? It was last night Richard culminated this dream that he told me about 6 years ago, but he actually set the first steps of this goal 30 years ago, and he made it happen 2021. Amazing, amazing story. The plan changes throughout the 30 years. My plan changed throughout even the 2 years, because I didn't really have a gigantic plan. I just knew the first couple of steps and the plan kind of evolved as we were going along. But you've got to be flexible, but you've got to have one. Doesn't have to be majorly complex, but you've got to at least put some of the thought process to it. If you want to have a chat to me, come on, find me. You know where to find me. We can have a chat about your plan, especially if it's real estate focused, then definitely let's chat about how perhaps I can help you there, either with the specialized knowledge, the outsourcing of lead generation services, the marketing, making you famous, all of that stuff. So, all right, what else was there? Look, I think that's a good start for your goal setting. And let me just sort of finish off on this. And it goes back to reading this book and taking these time-honored principles, because the actual tactics of what's going to get you there have changed since this book was written. But the principles that this book is based on, and by the way, a little side insider joke, when you get to chapter 11, I'm not going to go into it now, but the title is called The Mystery of Sex Transmutation. That was one of the ones that I struggled with. Let me just tell you, this is an amazing book. Do read that for yourself and see if you can apply some of those things. But remember, that's a bit of don't ignore any one of those principles. Don't get the burning desire principle right, where you're burning desire, you get the mental, rehearsal, and you're really visualizing what you want, but then forget the specialized knowledge. Because if you need certain skills and assets in your business, and then it's called delusion. You need to have a plan where realistically there's a reason for you to imagine that this goal is going to happen. If Richard just sat around for his entire life just dreaming about space, but without taking those steps to bring in the aeronautic specialists, he wouldn't have been 24 hours ago up there orbiting the bloody Earth in free fall. I believe there's like 1,000 odd people already on the waiting list, ready to go up. And duplicate what they just did last night in the Unity 22 ship, or whatever it's called. So, but go back to what, and I can't remember who it was either Wayne Dyer or someone like that. I can't remember who it was, but it was, don't set your goals on what you think you can achieve. Sure, it's nice if you can imagine it, but set your goals on what you really, really, really want. In terms of, don't just say, I've had people when we've sort of said, hey, what do you want to do? I've had people come to me wanting my help with getting them to their financial goals within the real estate space. I've said, what do you want? And they've worded, it could always do with a bit more. Yeah, it'd be good to be it'd be $300,000 be great. $300,000 next year. I say, well, is that gross or to you? And they go, oh, and they have to think about it. And I think, if you don't know the difference between $300,000 in your pocket or $300,000 in gross revenue, then what that means is you don't care. You don't really want $300,000 in your pocket. You'll never get $300,000. If you don't know that you want $300,000 and what that will mean to you, then the $300,000 is never going to happen. What will happen is maybe $300,000 gross will happen and you'll end up with 120 of that. You know what I mean? So you got to be real, real specific. And so think about not only what you want, but why do you want it? All right. So I'm not the best speaker in all of that because I'm a student of this game. And I'm surely more people that can be more motivational than me. And like for me, Eric Thomas, Jim Rohn, Tony Robbins, Kurek Ashley, Pat Mesiti, these guys were all my mindset coaches that taught me a lot of these things. Plus, of course, countless books by Napoleon Hill, Earl Nightingale, all of these legends that have led the way before us. I'm a student of this game, but I'm also a very good student because I apply these principles so I can also give you some real world examples from a guy who grew up in a normal town with normal parents, just like you. And I don't know if you guys know where Ipswich is, but there's nothing special about my upbringing. Nothing horrific about my upbringing, but nothing special about it. I just applied these principles in the manner with which it was described to me. And these amazing dream come true things happened for me because I followed the principles as they were described to me, and constantly success person after success person, like a Richard Branson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Gary Vaynerchuk, all of these people that I've had amazing association with, they did have all of these things that I've just described to you here in this class in common. So I'm going to leave it at that. Do the work now. Take the steps. I hope you took notes. If you didn't take notes, seriously, go back and listen to this again and take the notes and read that book and take more notes. Put your plan in place and then find the resources to give you those assets that you're going to need in order to make that goal happen. And understand that don't get all sooky if it doesn't happen within a month. Oh, I've been working real, real hard for a month and the $1 million hasn't happened yet, Gleb. Well, what do you think? If you gave up after, you've got to give it the due time that it needs to make the goal happen. Again, whether that's 30 years, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, if you don't want it bad enough, you'll never do a 30-year journey like our mate Sir Richard did. So, I learned a lot from Sir Richard. In future episodes of the podcast, we are going to talk some more about some of the lessons from him, from Arnold, and from a whole bunch of the people that have been my guides in this journey. And I'm honored to be able to share them with you. All right. Next week on this podcast, I know this one, we did interrupt a prospecting practical class with Greg McDaniel, and we're going to get back to part 2 of the cliffhanger that I left you on last week. But look, I had to chuck this one in because, hey, Richard went to space last night, huh? So yes, next week will be part 2 of the prospecting class. That might be part of the practical steps within your goal setting if you're a real estate agent, of course. But it's been an honor to bring this one to you. We will touch in with Sir Richard from time to time. We are still in contact with Sir Richard. Lots of lessons that we've gotten from him historically and lots more in the future because we're still in communication about maybe doing something with him again in the future down here in Australia. As soon as this COVID thing lets us open the world back up again, hey? All right, but for now, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to leave with, remember, next week, prospecting class again. And also remember the 2 resources that I've talked about on this podcast a few times. If you want to be in business, based on that early advice that Richard gave us about collectively coming together in some sort of collaborative co-op, if you will, thefutureofrealestate.com.au. And also, if you want your prospecting outsourced and those cold calls or lead generation and things, agentprospecting.com.au. And on that note, folks, until next time, I'm Glenn Twiddle signing off. Bye for now.